Jacques Cousteau's journey into the deep doesn't begin with a ship, a camera crew, or even the Calypso. It begins with a restless boy in rural France, curious, mischievous, and far from the ocean he would one day dedicate his life to. This is the story of how Cousteau's youth, his years in the French Naval Academy, and a single life-altering accident pushed him toward the sea, a turning point that neither he nor the world could have predicted. Chapter 1. A boy who could not sit still. Jacques was not the kind of child who obeyed boundaries, physical or intellectual. Born in Ijo-Ealing in Saint-André-de-Cubzac, he grew up in a family that was not wealthy, yet deeply cultured. His parents valued literature, music, and learning. They encouraged curiosity, but even they struggled to keep up with the boy's restless energy. From the moment he could walk, Jacques was exploring forests, streams, fields, anything that promised movement and mystery. He wasn't drawn specifically to the ocean yet, he was drawn to motion itself. And then, when he was 11 years old, something extraordinary happened. With his saved pocket money, Jacques bought a small movie camera, a little hand-cranked device, nothing special by modern standards, but for him it was a portal. He filmed everything: insects, trains, people in the street. He became fascinated with how motion could be captured, slowed, reversed, transformed. In a sense, Cousteau's love for exploration began with cinema, not the sea. It was the camera that awakened the storyteller in him. But even as he filmed the world around him, Jacques remained physically restless. He often got into trouble. He liked breaking things apart just to see how they worked. Teachers complained he was brilliant, but uncontrollable. Nobody in Jacques had any idea that this energy would one day be channeled into one of the greatest scientific missions of the 20th century. Chapter 2. The fearless teenager. As a teenager, Cousteau was wild. He climbed cliffs, raced bicycles, jumped off dangerously high places. He loved speed, he loved risk, and he loved freedom. By the time he reached his late teens, Jacques became fascinated with aviation. Not the ocean, not the underwater world. Airplanes were his dream. He wanted to become a naval aviator, flying high above the water, not diving beneath it. This is the first great irony of Cousteau's life. He originally wanted to conquer the sky, not the sea. To pursue this dream, he needed discipline, structure, a path. And so, at 20 years old, he did something that surprised even his own family. He applied to the French Naval Academy. Chapter 3. The Naval Academy. A mind awakn's life at the academy was rigid, demanding, and deeply traditional, but in that strict environment, something began to shape itself within Jacques. He learned navigation, engineering, the basics of naval physics. He learned how ships behaved in storms, how to read tides, how to command a crew. For the first time, the sea became practical to him, not mysterious not yet, but a force to be understood and respected. He also learned discipline, not because he naturally had it, but because the academy forced it into him. Still, Jacques remained Jacques. He didn't give up his camera. He shot small films of his classmates, of naval drills, of life aboard the training ships. Some instructors scolded him for wasting time, but others noticed something. Cousteau saw the world differently. He looked at reality and thought, how can I capture this? How can I share it? The seed of Cousteau, the filmmaker, was growing, long before Cousteau the explorer ever existed. Chapter 4. The accident that changed everything. By the early 1930s, Jacques was on the path to becoming a pilot in the French Navy. He trained intensely. He exercised. He prepared his body and mind. He was ready, and then, in one moment, everything changed. While on leave in 1933, Jacques was driving along a winding mountain road with friends. He loved speed, and that day he pushed the car too far. The vehicle crashed violently. Jacques was thrown forward, bone shattered. Both of his arms were broken. Doctors told him something even worse than the pain. He would never be fit to fly. His aviation dreams were over. This was the darkest period of his young life. He was depressed, angry, lost. He felt his future, his identity had been taken away from him. He was 22 years old, and then, unexpectedly, the sea called. Chapter 5. Recovery in the WATRS. Part of his rehabilitation, doctors encouraged him to swim, not for exploration, not for adventure, simply to strengthen his arms again. One day, a friend, Philippe Talius, invited him to the sea. Talius had a quiet love for the underwater world, a passion he rarely shared aloud, but he sensed something in Jacques: curiosity, intelligence, and the stubborn will to push limits. Talius handed Jacques a pair of simple wooden goggles. Try looking under the water, he said. Jacques slipped beneath the surface. What he saw that day was unlike anything he had ever witnessed, not in films, not on land, not in aviation. Fish gliding like living jewels, light spreading in slow, dancing waves, silence so deep it felt sacred. Shark resurfaced in shock. "This is another world," he whispered. At that moment, the direction of his life of ocean exploration, of marine conservation, of underwater filmmaking was sealed, not by choice, not by destiny, but by accident. A car crash that broke his arms had opened the door to the ocean. Chapter 6. The first real experience. Once Cousteau discovered the underwater world, he became obsessed with it, but diving technology in the 1930s was primitive. Divers were tethered by heavy hoses, masks fogged, suits restricted movement. Cousteau hated limitations. He wanted freedom underwater. He wanted movement, exploration, independence, so he experimented. He modified goggles. He tested homemades. He studied pressure and breath control. He filled notebooks with sketches and ideas. His friends thought he was going too far. Navy officers warned him the sea was dangerous. Jacques ignored all of them. He wanted to swim underwater as freely as on land, and he believed it was possible. This relentless experimentation would eventually lead him years later to the invention of the modern scuba system, the aqualung. But the very first steps were taken here, in the mid-1930s, with nothing more than homemade equipment and the fearless drive of a man searching for his new purpose. Chapter 7. A New Identity. Emerges. By 1936, Cousteau was no longer simply a naval officer. He was something entirely new, a young explorer discovering a realm nobody else had filmed or studied this way. He used his beloved camera underwater, holding it in a waterproof box he handmade. He captured fish, rocks, seaweeds, simple things, but filmed in a way nobody had ever seen before. His early underwater films were shaky, blurry, imperfect, but also revolutionary. The boy who loved motion had found the most beautiful motion of all, life, beneath the surface. His friends noticed he carried a new kind of energy, calmer than his youth, yet sharper, more focused. He had purpose again. The sea had given him back his identity. Chapter 8. The moment before a legend. The late 1930s were the final chapter before Cousteau's life would explode into global fame. War was approaching. The world was shifting. Technology was advancing. Cousteau had no ship, no diving team, no Calypso, no global mission, but he had something more powerful, a vision. He believed humanity could learn to breathe underwater. He believed film could unlock the ocean for people who would never die. He believed the sea was not a dark mystery but a world of light, movement, and life worth protecting. This video ends before the birth of the aqualung, before World War II, before Calypso, but everything that would follow: the inventions, the expeditions, the documentaries, the environmental movement, began here, in a young man who lost his dream of flying, and found something far greater beneath the waves.